Thank you for the introduction, and good afternoon, almost good evening. And first of all, thank you very much for the German Congress to host the presentation of the International Report 2012. We've been partners for a long time. Actually, when I first came to the ICPC, I remember that when I became Director General, this was official at a meeting held also together with the German, our governance meeting was held during the German Congress in 2009. So thank you very much. I'll begin my presentation now, still 5 minutes, to talk about the ICPC. The International Center for the Prevention of Crime was created 17 years ago by 3 governments, the government of France, Canada, and Quebec. Today, the organization has more than 50 members among national governments, cities, provinces, and also civil society organizations. This is a very unique aspect of the ICPC, the fact that we bring to the table governments and NGOs, governments and civil society organizations, and different levels of governments. And today I'm very proud to say they are very much spread around the world. So we have, beside the 3 countries that the 2 countries and Quebec that I mentioned today, we have South Africa, represented by the South African Police Service, Chile, Argentina, El Salvador, Norway, and many organizations there are today here, such as the Small Arms Survey, the European Forum for Urban Security, and many others. The ICPC works, we have 3 pillars in the way we work. The first one is technical assistance. So it's the work that ICPC provides on the ground. Just to give you some examples of that, today we have a project in Haiti where we are assisting the establishment of a crime observatory together with UNDP. We also have a project in Peru funded by CIDA, the Canadian International Development Agency, where we are assisting the formulation of 2 municipal crime prevention plans in 2 Peruvian municipalities focused on youth and violence against women. We just finished a community policeman assessment in Guatemala. So just to give you an example of the kind of projects that we're developing today. The second pillar of ICPC I would describe as the interchange that we promote. So these are mainly done by our seminars, international seminars, and colloquiums. We recently have our colloquium hosted together with the South African police and the South African government in Cape Town in February. It was extremely successful. You can talk to the South African guests who are here. It was extremely interesting. Space for exchange and learning. We have in September our 4th International Conference on Crime Observatories that will take place in Argentina this year. The previous conference were in Santiago, Paris, Montreal, and now the next one is going to be in Mar del Plata, Argentina. You're all invited. And finally, we have our, the 3rd pillar is our ICPC is also a knowledge base. And in this sense, I mean that we produce comparative studies, a series of research. Just to give you an example, we're now developing with the OECD and a consortium that it was established with different partners. ICPC is developing a research on the impact of transnational organized crime in communities. We are working with the Small Arms Survey on developing a tool to work on evidence and the role of evidence in the policymaking process when it comes to crime prevention. And the International Report 2012 is exactly the flagship product of ICPC when it comes to knowledge production. So I'm here today to present you the report and give you some highlights of the 2012 edition. The report is funded by Canada and by France. It has been funded since the beginning by these 2 countries, and is released every 2 years. This edition, we chose to have some specific topics, and I'll talk about them, and we decided to address them in a more deep way. And the report is made towards 2 policymakers, researchers, practitioners. That's our target audience, and the international community in general. We have cases, some case studies, contributions, and some transversal topics that are not addressed specifically one chapter, but hopefully in all the chapters. So I just need to figure out how. Mark, can you tell me? Okay. So some elements of the report, and I would like to start by the general approach of the report. We started from the assumption that safety is a right. And why it's so important to establish that and to say that is because we're not only talking about preventing crime, but promoting safety and believing that safety is something that every citizen in every country and city is entitled to. So it should be provided by governments as other social rights, such as education, health, safety is the same. So we should address it in this sense. And it means that you're safe to go to work no matter what time. It means that you have the right to the city. It means that you can occupy public spaces no matter if you're a man or a woman, if you're young, if you're old, and you have the same opportunities. So this is the starting point for the report. The other important aspect of our approach is that crime prevention can beneficiate from social policies. And what do I mean by that? Is that, first of all, we don't want to criminalize all social policies. And why do I say that? I come from a country, I come from Brazil, and at some point when we realized that social policies could benefit crime prevention strategies, there was a dilemma on the table. When you have a swimming pool in a wealthy neighborhood, this is a sports intervention. When you have a swimming pool in a poor neighborhood, this is a crime prevention intervention. So how do we find a balance on that? And we should assume that all these social services that are being delivered by governments, they're not there because people are potential criminals, but because they're entitled to. For sure, we can benefit from that. For sure, crime prevention can benefit from the good delivery of social services. But to prevent crime and to prevent criminals cannot be the reason for us to be developing, for the governments to be offering something that are supposed to be rights. So what the report does is trying to articulate these two dimensions, is how crime prevention can benefit from this without criminalizing every social policy. So these are the themes for the 2012 report. We have human trafficking, post-conflict and post-disaster areas, informal settlements, drug production in developed countries. We also bring the results of ICPC's survey on safety in cities, and we have special contributions in each area by experts to enrich the report. So I'll start by human trafficking. Human trafficking, as we all know and are very much aware, is a topic that has been raising awareness of different governments all over the world. Some of the issues that we explore in the international report, first of all, is the relevance of the phenomena. The session was open. The chair was talking about how hard it is to sometimes get data, precise data on some phenomena. I would say that human trafficking is one good example of that. We have a general figure. The question is, how did we arrive to this figure? How do we measure such a phenomena? So this is one of the issues addressed by the international report. How we define it is another one. Are we talking about trafficking? Are we talking about smuggling? Are we talking about exploitation? And then we analyze national strategies. So how many countries have today national strategies to address human trafficking, and how much do they address crime prevention? Some of the information that appear in the report is very much interesting. From the national legislation that we analyzed, we have 73% of the countries that we analyzed, 140, they have national legislation or a national action plan to face human trafficking. And this, compared to 10 years ago, there was only 10% of the countries had that. However, we have still, prevention is present, but not a lot. We have only 22% of the countries have prevention clearly address in their national strategy. Some of them, they have one or two mentions to prevention, but 3/4 have no mention to prevention in their national strategy. Why it's important for us to address human trafficking from a prevention perspective? First of all, to be capable of identifying the victims. We have been seeing in different countries how sometimes the actors were supposed to be identifying and working and preventing this kind of crime are not well trained to do that, or not capable of identifying. How the police is capable, for instance, of identifying human traffic victims. The second important thing is how to separate victims from perpetrators. What we are seeing around the world also is a confusion and sometimes the criminalization of people who are, as a matter of fact, victims of human trafficking. They are not illegal immigrants, they are not illegal workers, but they are victims of organized scheme of human trafficking. So to adopt a prevention approach is also to develop tools to make this distinction. And I think that the bottom line here is not to criminalize victims. I think this is the goal when you're talking about human trafficking. Sorry, I don't know why this has a life of its own. We have two case studies. One is Ukraine, the other one is Peru. I won't go to detail in the case studies you will find in the report. The other topic that we address is post-conflict and post-disaster, crime prevention in post-conflict and post-disaster areas. The reason we chose to do this is exactly because there is a big absence of crime prevention and the way crime prevention is addressed in these scenarios. We looked a lot and we did a lot of research in this sense. And first of all, the first finding is that crime prevention is not part of the first package of responses when it comes to post-conflict and post-disaster. Other things that are perceived as more urgent, such as reconstruction, health, they are the ones who appear as first responses in these scenarios. However, at the same time, what we have seen, and we have some cases in this report, such as Haiti, we see a raise in crime rates in scenarios where you have a natural disaster. So right after the earthquake in Haiti, you have a raise in crime, you had a significant raise in violence against women. So if you're willing to rebuild a state, if you're willing to, and crime prevention can be an essential tool to create peace in the community and to provide a role for development. The other topic that we have is informal settlements. Informal settlements, the decision of addressing this topic is, of course, the rapid urbanization and the fact that we're living in a world that is more and more described as this world of cities. We had crime emerging as an important issue for cities, and cities has grown in a very unequal way. So here in this chapter, we're going to address how different informal settlements have, first of all, been affected by crime and how they're dealing, how they're responding, and what are the opportunities in these areas to face and to tackle crime. And here we have some very interesting examples. One of them is the VPUU in South Africa. It's a project that it's done by the German corporation, and its emphasis is in urban renewal in one of South Kailicha, one of Cape Town's shanty towns or informal settlements. And we also have the example of Brazil with the UPP Social is a massive investment that has been done in Rio de Janeiro. It was a decision to combine a massive presence of the police in the morros, in the favelas, in the areas that were completely dominated by drug dealers. So the decision was to put police there and very present, but combine that with huge social investment. But social investment meaning not only social interventions and projects to youth or women, but also the provision of social service, such as garbage collections, such as water, such as sanitation. So there is a strong component there that relates to urban governance. How do you manage all these services, and how do you make them benefit a crime prevention strategy? The other topic that we decided to address is drug production in developed countries. And I'm sorry I'm not following the PowerPoint, but you will find everything on the report. It's just that drug production in developed countries. when it comes to crime prevention, drugs production is more traditionally approached when you're talking about the southern countries and the countries that are producing and exporting, let's say, to the north. We decided to take a look also in the drug that is produced in the northern countries, in the developed countries, to find out the impact of these markets in the local communities. And we have some interesting findings. This is information that is obviously out there, but what the report tries to articulate is the impact on these communities. So Canada today is one of our case studies. Canada has an important, relevant production of cannabis, and that it's consumed in Canada and also exported to the U.S. We also look to the case of U.S. We also look to Australia. So we try to see the impact of these local markets, how they not only impact local community, but how they can grow into criminal organizations. There is one discussion that is interesting, and we address also in the report, is the kind of responses that we have. And we mentioned the Latin American Initiative on Drugs and Democracy. This initiative that is being coordinated or launched by former presidents in the different Latin American countries. In the public debate, the attention has been drawn to the discussion of discriminalization of drugs. But the initiative makes many other points, such as to reduce consumption, to promote a public health approach and not only a criminalization or law enforcement approach, how to create alternative to drug cultivation. So if you're saying that people should stop planting coke, you should have an alternative in terms of economic development as well. So there is an interesting public debate going on this topic. And finally, the last chapter of the report is the results of our ICPC's global survey in safety in cities. Safety in cities has been at the core of the work of the ICPC since its start. ICPC was created by a mayor, a French mayor, that strongly believed that the city has a very important role to play when it comes to crime prevention and the promotion of safety. So we launched our first survey on safety in cities. We had more than 200 responses from different cities around the world. And I'll share with you some of the findings from the cities. The first one is that safety is more and more a topic for cities. And we have a large spectrum here. We have cities where the mayor is absolutely convinced, and in this case is the best advocate for local crime prevention. And we have cities where we have mayors that don't really have perceived or realized that they can play an important role when it comes to prevent crime. So, but what we're saying is that this is what we're seeing in the survey is that this is becoming more and more of an important topic for cities around the world. Some of the challenges and some of the trends. The first one is that the cities believe that they have a contribution to make when it comes to crime prevention. There is no question for the cities that answer our survey that they have an important role to play. But they face some challenges. And the first one, which I find very interesting, that it's the same all over the world, is in terms, it relates to budget. And you can talk to a mayor in Latin America, you can talk to a mayor in Europe, you can talk to a mayor in Africa, and they will say, we have an issue regarding budget, because we know that cities have limited budget, they have limited way of increasing their budget as well. So not only the kind of plans that they are able to develop by themselves are limited, but they need to articulate other sources of funding. And by this, I mean, in some cases, some of our answers are talking about cities working with national governments. In some cases, we're talking about cities working with civil society. In some cases, we're talking about cities working with international donors, which for us poses a very interesting point and question, how more and more cities and international cooperation agencies will have to work with cities. We had a mayor session at the second ministerial review of the Geneva Declaration, and one of the conclusions of the sessions, the conclusions of the mayors, was that international cooperation agencies need to have better channels of dialogue and funding for cities. And I'm talking about the World Bank, I'm talking about the Inter-American Development Bank. How are they going to fund cities? What are the channels for them to do so? The other challenge that appears in our survey is training and skills. Even if cities are convinced that they have a role to play, they feel that they need more training. They feel that they need to build capacity. And then there is the topic of turnover, the topic of who is the personnel who is going to work, where the program is going to be located in the city. But anyhow, there is a demand, there is an issue, and there is a request for more capacity building at the local level. The modalities of cooperation with civil society are very diverse. Sometimes is consultation, so civil society is part of a consultation process to establish a plan. Sometimes civil society are an active partner of the development of or implementation of a crime prevention strategy. What we hope, in terms of topics that appeared in our survey, there are topics of concern for the cities. Guns appeared as a topic of concern for the cities that answered to our survey. Drugs appear, and substance abuse appears as a topic of concern for the cities who answered our survey. Assault appears as well, when you can see in our tables, as an important issue as well. What we want with the survey is that the results of the survey becomes a material for us, and not only ICPC, but for us with our partners to work with cities. I think we're going to be constantly updating the survey, but I think the survey is a good step for us to start to work or continue to work with the cities. We have some key messages of the 2012 International Report. I won't read the PowerPoint. You're capable of doing that yourselves, and they're on the executive summary that you have it outside. I just want to say why for us it's so important to have. There is no conclusion of such a report. I cannot say that we have, and then we have a beautiful conclusion in terms of crime prevention. But we have very important key messages. And why for us they're so important? Because nowadays we have a tension between models, between prevention and repression. It's very important, and I think it's very important for us and for all of us to make a strong point why we choose prevention. And I think that for a long time, prevention has appeared as the choice that we don't have information about. We don't know if it works or not. We don't know who is doing. And what the report brings is that there's a lot of people doing prevention. It is working, and you can connect the dots. And on the other hand, when you talk about a repressive approach, we're talking about a reactive approach, therefore not very well planned, therefore not very well targeted, therefore expensive, and as we've been seeing all over these years, very inefficient. So the key messages of our report are important exactly in this sense, to show that why prevention is a good choice and why and how this has been working on the ground. So the information on the ER, I hope that it becomes an information for us to build an alternative model, for us to inform the work that we're doing in prevention. So the report will be available in May. In ICP, we'll have a special website for the report. The entire document is available in English, French, and Spanish. We have executive summaries in 8 languages. They are all there outside, and they're also going to be available in the electronic version. And I would like to conclude this presentation saying that ICPC wants to use this report with its partners. If it's by disseminating it, if it's using the report to promote training, if it's the entire report, one specific chapter. But that's the reason we invest in developing such a report. So I hope to be working with you and promoting and using such a document. Thank you very much.
Questions? Yes? After. You first, and then the questions. Is this working? I would like to now give the floor to Mr. Pinto, so hold your questions that you may have had for Paula. Then we do a question and answer session to the two presenters after the second presentation. For the recordings.
Good evening, everybody. It's not quite a presentation because I was asked to be here with short notice. And mainly, I want to point what is our linkage between the EFUS and the ICPC. As I said in this morning, EFUS is a network of 300 cities. We have 300 cities in 18 countries in Europe and 7 national sections. One of the most important sections is our German section, and I suppose nowadays I can say it's one of the most active sections. And EFUS is also concerned about the future of the preventions, namely in times of economic crisis like this one, states, cities, everyone normally try to do things in a cheaper way. And I don't know why, but in the mind of the people, in the mind of the decisions, and in the mind of every one of us, normally preventions has turned to be more expensive than repression policies. And so that's why I think the report of ICPC is so important, and I want to congratulate them because ICPC has a report that touches 2 or 3 things that are, for us Europeans, very essential. One is the definition of what is prevention. We can discuss it a lot, but I suppose in our report of ICPC, they have clear definitions about what is crime prevention, namely with the linkage to the social politics and to the well-being of people in general. And so, and secondly, I suppose the overview of crime prevention on the evolution of crime prevention, namely in the United States, is also very important. Why? Because I suppose it can be shown that in these past 20 years, the decreasing of homicides in the United States and the discussion between which are more effective if it was the repression policies or if it was the integration policies. And I suppose that with that report, we can be able to think that putting more money in repression policies is not the way of doing things. Secondly, I want to say that there's a chapter on safety cities, and there's a report about what the states of the art of the policies in our cities, in what happens to preventions. We have many programs, we have many books, many publications doing about all the kinds of the programs we have in place. And I suppose that the observation that the report does is something, because I suppose it's the first time we have an evaluation, a kind of evaluation of what cities are doing all around the world to engage themselves in the prevention policies. And we have been working with the ECPCs since is born. ECPCs as well, an international or worldwide organization. We are focused mainly in Europe, but we change the same values, namely that security is everybody's business, a right for everybody then can be achieved through the well-being of the citizen and cohesive societies. Safety should be based on prevention, law enforcement, and mutual support. We have many topics together, and we have been working since Zaragoza, Naples, and now in our organization. We are going to have a conference in Aubervilliers-Saint-Denis this year, where the time of the prevention will be the main subject of our conference. And I suppose that it would be very important to everybody to participate in our conference. This report shows also something that I want to say to you, that working together between cities is the most effective way of showing the benefits of prevention. That is, that there is no problem all around the world that haven't been lived by one city. And so when we can change our methods, we can change our diagnostics, when we can change our practice, that's the better way to do, and it's a more quick way to a city deal with a problem that occurs in a moment. And the better way the cities know how to deal with the problem is to exchange in a network. And so what happens here is that we should invite you to first see our webpage, then to participate in our conference, because we also are very much interested to know what are the experience of all the cities all around Europe. And for the last, I want to say that the ICPC reports will be a moment to us all to learn a bit more or about what is happening in the world about the prevention. I'm sorry of my English, because sometimes it's very difficult, although I speak well, sometimes it's very difficult to make, how can I say, to follow up the thought, because normally I don't go like this in this kind of liberal form, and that is why I'm so, how can I say, so anxious, I may say, because I cannot express what I would like to express in more fluently way, and I'm sorry about that.
Thank you very much, both of you, for your presentations, for presenting the report, but also for elaborating on some of the points in it, and stressing the need for sharing lessons learned, best practices among cities and local authorities. I would like to now, we have 20 more minutes to open the floor for some questions and answers. So please don't be shy. Are there any questions that you have for the speakers? I think everybody is a bit tired, indeed. Maybe if you allow me to ask a question, because I mean, I took note of several interesting elements in the report, and I think one of them that I noted was that you said that only, I think, 1/4 of the national strategies on trafficking in human beings, combating trafficking in human beings, contains a prevention element into it, which is interesting, I think. Within UNODC, we have seen, we know that there's the protocol to the United Nations Convention against Organized Crime, which calls on prevention, but we see that many countries focus in particular on prosecution and protection elements and not on the prevention elements, and if they do, it is often in the form of awareness-raising campaigns, etc. I was wondering whether you have any good practices in terms of doing prevention beyond raising awareness, which of course is important to raise the profile of the issue and to have policymakers start thinking about it, but it's surely not enough.
Okay, I'll answer from here, and I'm sorry to talk about Brazil again, but it's just that it's a reality that I not only know very well, but it's adequate for this case specifically. Not only Brazil, but Latin America in general, human trafficking became an issue at a certain point, not because these countries decided it was an issue, but because the international community decided that this was an issue. And as a result, Latin America, all of a sudden, had a lot of investment towards human trafficking prevention. And this was something that the countries had to start to work and elaborate how they would address this issue. And elaborate really from a starting point, like what is human trafficking? Is this really a problem for us? And this is a scenario that can be described for Latin America in general. There's a lot of investment, and what we saw, it was civil society organizations getting resources from donors and establishing work plans and interventions, but with no sustainability because it wasn't a decision that was made also engage in the government. What we are seeing now, and so when these funds disappeared, also the projects disappeared. What we are seeing now in Brazil is a different process. The government has its national strategy on human trafficking, and it has more and more also an emphasis in prevention, in training. And Latin American countries, and Brazil has been working with its neighbors to establish work on the borders as well, and also realizing that it's not a national issue only, but is a borders issue, so you need to work together. Well, okay, so now we're wake up. So I think that it's a process, and it's no different from other crimes. We've seen other crimes being addressed this way. So the first step is you need to have a legislation. For some countries, once you have a legislation, it's done. So you can say, oh no, I have a legislation to address this topic. So then is how do you turn this legislation into action, and when are you going to realize that you need also to incorporate prevention in that? I think that we are in a moment now where prevention is being mainstreamed, and as you mentioned, within UNODC this is the case, but we see more and more the edition of 2010 of the International Report show exactly the increase in the number of countries which are adopting crime prevention strategies. So this is very positive. However, it shows also that the prevention strategies are still an appendix of the national strategies and not a strategy itself. So I think this is the shift that we need to make.
Yes, I see a question there in the middle.
I have a simple question. When we understand the center as a platform for knowledge management, can you describe in brief words what is the procedure and what is done to make a case study? When you come to declare an example as a case study, what is now the, let's say, the administrative and the scientific work to document this case study and to spread it?
So I think we need to use the microphone. I'm looking at the organizers. Or well, for the next question, please, if you can.
And if we can reduce the light just a little bit, it would be also nice. I think it's different. I mean, in the report specifically, we had case studies, and they have different status. Some of the case studies, they were developed with the people that were, for instance, in the case of VPUU, I visited VPUU. We're in close contact with them. I had like the pictures that in the report are pictures that I took. We had the material. So this was how the case was built. Of course, we're always running the risk of you not being happy with us, but I think this is the risk that we run in general. Some of the case studies, they weren't built in partnership with the subject that we were studying, for different reasons. So it's really diverse. But ICPC as a knowledge center, I think that we approach, it's also very diverse. I mean, we have, from the projects that I described and the projects that we have on the ground, the reason we developed this project is because we want to build our own knowledge. I don't want to say only this happened in Colombia, but we were doing this in Colombia. I think there's a huge difference there for us to build our knowledge also from situations where we were involved in the work. We also work a lot with our partners and our members. So one of the publications that is out there is this guide that we developed together with the Chamber of Commerce of Bogota and the World Bank. It's a guide to action to public-private partnerships in crime prevention and community safety. So you're going to see a lot of cases presented in this guide, and this was done in partnership with our members. So it's really diverse. It depends a lot from case to case.
I think I saw another question somewhere here, or no? If there are no more questions, I think we should not take up more of your precious time this afternoon.